Hi, this is Joe Hage. I have the privilege of leading your medical devices group, which as of this recording has 348,000 members worldwide. And one of the reasons it's grown so large is because we have experts like Ella and Dr. Mikhail on the call who are going to teach us about medical device managing evolving standards in multiple jurisdictions. Ella, the floor is yours.
Oh, yeah, no, my apologies for that. Yes, I'm going to say it again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who has attended today. Thank you, Joe, for those introductions. And again, thank you for attending today's webinar. Now, I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm going to introduce my co-host, Dr. Mikhail. And I'm also going to give you a little bit of information about Instem as well, because I want you to have some context as to where I'm coming from today and about the company that's driving the webcast. But to start off, my name is Ella Shaw. I'm an application specialist at Instem, and I work with the regulatory information management team. Now, I'm usually based in the UK, but I'm really lucky today. I'm actually speaking to you from our Philadelphia office. Now, my co-host is Dr. Mikhail, who is a regulatory affairs expert. He's got over 30 years industry experience, and he's going to be speaking to you from Germany. Now, just a tiny little bit about Instem, again, so you've got some context. We were established in the 1970s. We're a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange. We have 11 office locations worldwide, and we have well over 500 customers. Okay, now, simply said, Instem provides software and services that help bring your products to market faster and more efficiently. And we're doing this by creating a more connected ecosystem within the life sciences. So consolidating and harmonizing processes that help to streamline workflows, reduce costs, shorten timelines, and create opportunities for our clients. Now, more specifically, we do that by supplying technology and services, and that is to help our clients to better access, capture, manage and enrich a wide variety of data while generating new insights for our teams. Now, we organise our solutions into 4 primary areas of focus. If you look to the top left, hopefully you'll be able to see our preclinical study management, which is supported by Provantis. Moving to the right, we've got our e-study data and regulatory information management, which includes our SEND and Samandara MES services. And this is the area that I'm coming from today and will be our focus of the webcast. Moving on, we've got our early phase clinical study management, which is powered by AlphaDAS, and then our big data analytics and information sciences, which is supported by KnowledgeScan. Now, you'll be very helpful to know that that's the only level of detail that I'm going to go into today. But if you want to learn any more about what I just talked about, you can visit us at instem.com, or you can always drop us an email directly using the address info@instem.com. But let's move on. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's webcast, which is medical devices managing evolving standards in multiple jurisdictions. Again, as said, it's presented to you by myself, Ella Shaw from Instem, and Dr. Mikhail, who's got a wealth of first-hand experience from the industry, and he's really kindly offered his time today. And together we will discuss ways of tackling your standards globally. Okay, so it's going to be things like we know standards such as the FDA, UDI and the EU MDR are now being enforced, and all of this needs to be compliant. But what I'm going to challenge you on today is, are you implementing them in the most efficient way? And more importantly, is your answer a long-term solution? Today, we're going to shed light on some of our issues, and you can take away some practical knowledge to implement within your role. Okay, so to give you an idea of where, at a very high level, I'm going to set the scene as to which particular challenge this webcast is referencing, but I'm going to spend the majority of the webcast, along with Dr. Mikhail, discussing points for you to consider and maybe even adopt when tackling this challenge yourself. Now, there will be time at the end for Q&A, but should you wish to reach out to us separately or you think of questions afterwards, we are going to provide our contact details at the end, and please feel free to reach out to us. Okay, so variation around the UDI theme. So this is my attempt to be creative, as what I mean by this title is that when a standard is created globally, it's adopted with variations to the original. So as we know, a regulatory body will spend a lot of time, research, collaborative effort building a standard. And after they come to a final decision, they release their guideline to the global regulatory market for implementation. However, for all sorts of reasons, ranging from country-specific issues or influences of other agendas, the standard isn't always adopted as is. The region will use the guideline, but with some additions specific to that of the authority. So our challenge here is that not only do you need to ensure your products are compliant with the new standard, which in itself is a lengthy and costly process, but you also have to implement additions specific to each region your product is sold into. Now, to compound this issue, the regions release their own guidelines and adopt the standard at different times. And this makes the process to become or even remain compliant difficult to organise and manage. Okay, so one example I want to look at further is the IMDF guideline for the UDI. Now, this guideline is globally available, and currently both the FDA and the EU are in the process of implementing it. However, they are utilising the opportunity that the UDI brings to also implement updates and changes related to their own medical device regulatory activities. Okay, so for example, the EU MDR, which is equivalent to the FDA UDI in the US, has 347 amendments plus an additional 254 amendments to its partner, the IVDR, from the original. So that's a lot of changes, okay? So what this means for the EU MDR, when these changes are enforced, it means things like there's going to be more stringent clinical data requirements. They're going to have extended data management. They're making the conformity assessment more complex. They're introducing penalties and so forth. Okay, and similar in the US with the FDA, they've got additional rules for direct marking. They've created the Gooded Central System, which has to be enforced and updated, and so on. Now, the table here is only a snippet of the differences between the IMDRF UDI standard and the UDI standards in other authorities. But what you can easily see when looking at the comparisons between these three regions that I've picked on as examples is that it illustrates my point that there is variation. So in December 2013, the IMDRF released their final document for the UDI guidance. Now, Canada is making no changes, but, oh, hello? Hello? Oh, sorry, I had a bit of background noise. What was I saying? Okay, so Canada is making no changes, but the US and the EU are. So each region is adopting the UDI labelling to their own timescales. So we've got the FDA has to be compliant by 2018, the EU has to be by 2020. They're creating their own central system. So as I said, the US has got the Gooded. In the EU, we've got UDIMED. And they're all using their own legal requirements. Now, of course, this makes sense as the countries themselves are different, and I'm not here to break down the whys, but I'm going to offer evidence as to how managing standards on a global scale can start to become really difficult. The issue we have here is that although you're able to implement the UDI standard, if your product is in different regions, the rules will differ for that same product. Plus, you will then have to manage the same product differently depending on when you are submitting the product. And this is a tricky undertaking, and it requires not only UDI expert regulatory knowledge, but you're going to have to couple it with region-specific expertise. And this is the premise for today's webcast. How is it best to manage evolving standards on a global scale? And it's the question that we're going to answer today. Okay, so change is the only constant. This is an apt quote for the situation that the medical device industry now finds itself, because this period of activity is what I'm going to use to illustrate my point. And on screen you can see a timescale of activities represent the pressure that we're all under. Now, the first set of activities that I'm adding are those from the US FDA timeline. Now, as I said before, in 2013, the IMDRF guideline was published, and the FDA then set a plan to implement UDI over a number of years. The highest risk classes need to be compliant first, moving down a sliding scale until all the devices need to be compliant by 2018. Now, as we've seen yesterday, they've changed that once again, and our class 1 and our unclassifieds are now need to be compliant by 2020. So even more emphasising my point that it is ever changing. Just as we feel that we are becoming comfortable, they change it again. Now, as you saw in my previous slide, the changes from the IMDRF UDI guideline to the FDA UDI guideline mean that specific UDI rules are needed for your devices in the US. And then as we approach this 2018 deadline, well now 2020, the EU additionally have released their final rule at the beginning of this year. And as you can see on the timeline, this gives us till 2020 to have the medical devices compliant and 2022 to have the in vitro devices compliant for the EU. So this all starts to get a bit sticky. Our class 3s have to have UDIs in the US, but not in the EU until 2020, or not at all for other authorities. And even if all the products had a UDI label on the submission process, so even if all the products had this UDI label, when you go to different authorities and the submission process and the documentation are still going to differ. An additional issue is that when our UDI focus for, sorry, I've completely lost my place. What I was going to say is that as well as our UDI focus, we've got other standards that are also going to change. Okay, so I've kind of put up here that we've got IDMP on our timeline. Now, for those of you who don't know, we've got IDMP being implemented in Europe. And IDMP stands for Identification of Medical Device Products. And it's like UDI, but it's been developed in response to a worldwide demand for internationally harmonised specifications for medical products. Now, this new standard has started to unfold again during this year, and the impact is yet to be fully understood. But it is an example of a standard that will impact you at some point. As we all know, UDI won't be the final hurdle in the future of our medical devices. Something that I've tried to show, if you can see, I've got future IDMP iteration dates unknown, because although that we have our dates for iteration 1, they've yet to tell us the dates for iteration 2, 3 and 4. It's all still very unknown. Other considerations that we may take into account are things like our medical device vigilance and our pharmacovigilance standards. So for those of you who don't know, we've got the ICH E2B, which are still in flux because we've got revision 3 due any time this year. We're hearing from companies that they're looking for answers on how to keep track and remain up to date during these periods of change. And the challenge that I'm presenting to you here is that with multiple timeframes and with multiple standards across the globe, how is it the best way to ensure that no critical mistakes are made? And have you considered what your long-term plan will be? Is it a plan that is a sticking plaster across the hull of a sinking ship, or is it a long-term solution that's going to keep you afloat? Now, the focus of this webcast is UDI in the US, but this is just one of many changes and new standards which are coming across our desks. Already, I've mentioned the EU MDR, which is the EU UDI equivalent, which may or may not impact you depending on where you're submitting your products. But what we do know is that UDI will not be your last hurdle. An example of where Instem are currently tackling this similar situation is with the IDMP release into the EU. Now, IDMP was previously known as XEVMPD, and Instem were market leaders in driving this standard, and now that it's been improved, it's now going to transition into IDMP. Just as with UDI implementation, we know the impact of changeable standards and varied timescales is high. Again, just like with the UDI, the final guideline was released and it's being implemented in different regions on different timescales with variations to the original. In both UDI and IDMP, there are similar concerns. So, for example, how are we going to ensure all the data fields are covered, what we're going to do if the requirements change. And this is a problem because it could impact your device compliance and it may impact the timeframes to complete your internal processes. So the solution for UDI, IDMP and other evolving standards is one that needs to be flexible. It needs to cover all the requirements of each standard and it needs to be committed to remaining compliant. It has to be a solution for the long term. It can't be a quick fix that needs to be reconfigured with each release. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to demonstrate how Instem Tool Salmon RMS can help you manage your UDI and other evolving standards globally. But before I get to that point, I'm going to introduce you to our regulatory expert, Dr. Mikhail. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce him. He's got a wealth of first-hand knowledge and experience implementing new and changing standards. And he's going to offer his industry experience on what to consider when addressing the challenges that I've presented in the session today. So hopefully, Dr. Mikhail, I'm going to pass over to you.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good morning in the US. Thank you for inviting me to share some of my experience and can be very useful advice for you as well. So after this excellent presentation by Ella touching to IDMP, which is exceeding XCVMPD, and I remember when we started 2008 working with Summarin with the goal to have a system which allows me as Global Head of Regulatory Affairs to know which license I have in which country with which manufacturing site for this particular product. I could not have this easily done by a mouse click. So I have been working with Summarin in 2008 to put a system in place that allows me to manage the regulatory activities, and I will give you examples of that during these next 10 minutes. So IDMP was now replacing XCVMPD, so this will necessitate quite a minimal effort in order to adapt the XCVMPD system we have in place, and of course comply with NGR, IVDR, UDI for the US, UDI for Canada, etc. So for the next 10 minutes, I will just give you an overview about why we need to start early. My advice is not to wait. Start early enough, start now, because we have the deadlines already mentioned by Ella, 2020, which is less than 3 years from now for the UDIs and medical devices, and 2022 for in vitro diagnostics. So these are quite very tight timelines. Yes, these are less than 2 years time and less than 5 years time, but there are still tight timelines. You should start now, not to wait, in order to avoid problems that has been faced by others working in industry, including myself. It takes time in order to have a system in place that it fits the company's IT infrastructure. It is not just you will acquire a system that will just be added to your IT, global IT infrastructure in the company, and it's done. No, you will see that your system, this new system, need to be adapted to the IT infrastructure so that the different systems can talk to each other, can be compliant with each other, and can be actually not hindering each other. You can create hyperlinks between this system, which shows you where you have which license, which gives you the overview of where you have your UDIs, which product is in Europe, which product is in US, which product is in the rest of the world. So to structure the system and to hyperlink this system with your data management system so that you have the documents hyperlinked to the corresponding data of the product, that is the smartest way to do it. But for this, you need really to start early enough to have, the check about the global IT infrastructure of your company, getting your company IT experts working with the Summarin's experts in order to adapt and to have a system which fits within your IT infrastructure. The system should be tailored to the company needs. It's not only to the regulatory requirement needs. The regulatory requirements, that's done, that's known, that has been just presented by Ella. And the beauty of Summerint is that they have both the infrastructure and the understanding of the IT, as well as of the regulatory requirements. This combination is actually unique, and we see more and more vendors combining this excellent expertise on regulatory as well as on IT, which makes life easier for you and for your IT experts to understand what's going on and to work together with Summerint experts. So to start early means that you have the right system that makes your company smart. It is not only about complying with regulatory requirements, it is also to help you managing your regulatory activities. So the system should fit also your company needs, not only the regulatory compliance needs. You make most out of the system when you start early, getting the right systems that makes your company smart while ensures you remain compliant. So ensuring you remain compliant is one important aspect, but not the only aspect that you need to consider. As mentioned, the help of Summerint was significant due to their IT knowledge combined with regulatory and compliance knowledge. And for example, the database can give you and the stakeholders within your company the regulatory status overview of your product portfolio. I remember the CEO was asking me, what about this product in this geography? And I will drop you an email to have news. Is this has been approved or not, or where is the status? So in order not to receive hundreds of emails asking me about regulatory status, I give access, a read-only access to those management team members who need to know where we are with which regulatory activity, so that when they need an information, they just log in and they have a read-only access, and they can see the latest and the current status of the regulatory approval for the product, for the particular product. So this makes also, the spread of information easier at any time of the day, independent of the geography, be it a person sitting in the US with different time zones than Europe, different time zones than Asia. So this helps you also managing the regulatory information flow within the company. Another very important overview is really the access to the documents related to the corresponding license. This is a database that will give you a regulatory information, which product has been submitted where and when, and it has been approved when or not yet approved. But the corresponding documents are in your document management system, and you can hyperlink this database to the document management system, ECTD dossier, for example, for a pharmaceutical product, or the corresponding document for the medical device product. So it is advantageous to have both systems separate. That's my experience, as having them in one system may result in slowing down one or both systems. So that was actually a very nice approach, saying, okay, we'll have a database and we'll hyperlink it to the document management system. So when I click at the database, in the database on the particular product, it gives me automatic access to the corresponding document in the document management system. So that's a very nice engineering that fits having two separate systems, so the system remains very quick and doesn't slow down. And also it has the advantage that if one system has a problem, the other system continues to work properly without any impact. So it is advantageous to have both systems separate, as having them in one system may result in slowing down, or if an issue occurs with one of both systems, the other continues to work and is not affected. The system helps you planning the regulatory activities like product changes, variations, supplements, pre-approval supplements, etc. so that you don't miss a deadline. As this is a particularity of this database, of this regulatory management system, it has a reminder function or an alert function that sends you an automatic alert or automatic reminder as we approach a deadline. These hyperlinks and reminder functions need to be programmed and planned early enough, both with IT support and with regulatory and, of course, your management support. You need to develop SOPs. That's why you need to start early. You need to develop SOPs for the use of the system. For example, to determine who will have read-only access and who will have read and write access. This has to be set and to be determined and to be set forth in an SOP, a corresponding SOP. Determine the access rights. So this will help, of course, will be with the help of your IT department. For example, as an example, you will have all the countries in alphabetical order, and the regulatory manager in France, for example, letter F will, by error, will not access or write something in the letter F, Finland. So he or she will not have access to Finland, but only to France. And this also avoids any sabotage or, any error, intentional or unintentional. So that's also a peculiarity of this system. It is very smart and to give access rights, read and write rights to the corresponding person in the corresponding country. When inspected, for example, a pharmacovigilance inspection, and this is also one of the examples that I had, a regulatory inspector, for example, from the UK MHRA, start asking you, show me your licenses. You show your database, the regulatory management system. Then he or she will be delighted really to see that you have all your licenses in one place, and per mouse click you can have all the details of every license and of course the renewals and the PSURs when it comes to pharmaceuticals, and when you will submit your pharmacovigilance documents, etc., when is the planned second birth date and second PSUR calendar. So that's all in one place, and that's all also related to the RMS system. Then the next question, is your system validated to avoid any loss of integrity? So the answer is clearly yes, it is GAMP validated. And that's one of the bullets on the slides in front of you. Validation. It is definitely GAMP validated, GAMP validated. So there is that's something that also regulators would like to see and to hear. So they say, then the next question, show me your SOPs and who has access. So that, you show your SOPs. But in order to prepare all this, you need to start really early enough. So start now. Of course, as I mentioned, the system helps maintaining data integrity while also at the same time maintaining regulatory compliance. And the problem faced, one of the problems faced by those working in industry is the time pressure to manage regulatory activities without missing a deadline. The system helps doing this as it has this reminder function that reminds you early enough. For example, 6 months ahead of a deadline, it sends you a reminder of the activity, then monthly, then weekly as we approach the deadline, then daily, the more we approach to the deadline, so you cannot miss a deadline. And once you have clicked on the on this reminder function that the activity has been completed, you add the completion date, then the reminder function ceases to be sent to you. I mentioned the hyperlink to the corresponding documents in the document management system that allows you to track and manage the documents as well as your database, the data itself, the date, the submission date, approval date. And the beauty also of this system, once you have filed a variation or a supplement, and then you obtain the approval, then you put the approval date into the system sends automatically an alert or an information or a reminder, whatever you can call it, to the manufacturing site that now this variation has been approved, so that the variation can be implemented at the manufacturing site, and to the warehouse, so that the warehouse knows that the variation has been approved, they have to sell out the product which is still in the warehouse under the old formulation, if you want. And then once they have sold out, so that nothing can be eliminated or destroyed, the manufacturing site gets the information, they start to manufacture the product under the new approved variation or supplement. So this reminder function is really wonderful. It helps managing the whole activities within the company as well, not only the regulatory activities. So this system is composed of modules, a pharmaceutical module for pharmaceuticals, a medical device module for medical devices, because multinational companies have a portfolio of pharmaceuticals as well as medical devices, as well as drug device combinations. So the system helps you really managing all that in a very smart way and in a modular way, which is global and easy to use, very much user friendly. Also, the system offers online training. It is user-friendly, but at the same time, it offers online training, which is warranted where needed. So those who need some training, the system offers this online training, so there is no need to travel and to have, an on-site training. If this is needed, of course, it can be done with the help of the Summerint staff as well, helping on-site training as well with on-site demonstrations. So as mentioned, the system is GAMP validated and fulfills validation requirements, both CFR and European validation requirements. So as you see, all this takes time, and therefore, out of my experience, my advice is to start early, not to wait to the last minute before the 2020 deadline or the 2022 deadline. Start now. The system is a long-term solution that is adaptable to changing regulatory requirements, thanks to the continuous support of the vendor, Summerint, and their development IT teams, who are always present and available. That's actually the beauty. I worked with large IT companies, I worked with small IT companies, smaller ones, and I can tell you that the experience with the smaller ones is much better, much rewarding, and much more cost-effective. And they are very much available, much more than big IT companies, because smaller teams are very quick responding rather than the larger IT suppliers. So the system ahead, they really help you. I mentioned XEVMPG and IGMP. They work with you because they have developed the XEVMPG1, and they define with you what are the adaptation to the ISO requirements, and what is the easiest and the smartest and the least expensive one. So they work with you really on it, and they adapt your system accordingly. And each time they have a new release, they make it available to all their customers, not only to the company who has actually initiated the new release, working with them on the modifications and the improvements of the system. So I will stop here and give back to Ella. I expired my 10 minutes, and I thank you very much for your attention. I'll be more than happy at the end if there is any question I can answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Mikhail. Thank you. I really appreciate the time that you've taken today, and I know how busy you are and everything, so thank you very much for that. Okay, so now that Dr. Mikhail has offered his considerations, I'm going to take a bit of time now, and I'm going to discuss how Instem would go about approaching managing standards on a global scale. Okay, so here at Instem, we feel the best way to tackle this issue of managing your standards successfully is to ensure that you have three things. Okay, so number one is have somewhere central to maintain your data. Number two is to make sure you've got a way to ensure that you are remaining compliant. And number three is whatever solution you implement, make sure that it is medical device specific. Now, I'm going to elaborate these on much more and go into a lot more detail about what I mean by each of these points, and I'm going to use Instem's tool, Summerint RMS, to kind of assist me along the way and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so my point number one that I told you with our tackling issues is maintaining your data. And I would say that maintaining your data is key. In fact, I'd probably go as far as saying that it's the most important factor as it's a foundation for a strong and stable long-term solution. So our clients, they come to us and they've got multiple Excel spreadsheets. They've got them from all over the company and they each contain different variations of the same data. Now, we're already tackling challenging and changing rules for our standards. If the information that we have for this is scattered, missing, out of date, we're making an already difficult task much worse. Now, so an easy fix for this is to have one central database. Okay, to have one system where you input the data once and it updates itself in real time. Now, I feel that this is the most efficient use of your staff's time. It allows you to track all of this data. It's all in one place. You know it's up to date. And it also allows for global collaboration. Now, global is really important here because, as I said before, we've got different standards in different regions. Don't have a database per area. It causes as many problems as it solves. Have one database and have it cater for everything. Okay, so here on the left-hand side is a section that I've taken from Xamarin RMS, and this particular image is taken from the bit that's designed for UDI-specific submission. So the users know that if these yellow diamonds are complete, that they're UDI compliant. Okay, so it's that easy. To have something that can do the same thing for IJMP, EU MDR and so forth, to have one data set that's compliant for all of these standards that it supports. And thus managing these various evolving standards becomes very easy and it caters for my global product base. Okay, point number 2 was remaining compliant. Okay, so we all know that not remaining compliant isn't an option. Okay, but we've discussed so far that remaining compliant with all these changing regulations isn't an easy feat. Ideally, you need organisation. Okay, an organisation which can be scaled up for your global solution. Okay, so for example, deadlines and alerts which automatically set themselves up when you add your data, or being able to plan far ahead for upcoming regulatory deadlines. Now on the right hand side is the Xamarin RMS dashboard, and when I log on I can see a list of registration events linked to my products. Now I can easily see what needs urgent attention and the details that allow me to locate it. So as you can see, we've got this kind of colour coding thing going on. So at the moment I'm a really naughty employee. 8 days ago I should have got my renewal in. So I know that this is now taking priority. This should have been done, it should have been sorted out, and that I've got to sort this. But as well as that, without being single-mindedly focused, I know that in the next kind of week or so, I've got 2 more renewals coming up, and again in 2 and 4 months' time. And this allows me to plan exactly what activities I'm doing. It allows me to get my staff in order so it actually happens, and it means that none of the balls are dropped because I know exactly what's coming up. All this data that I'm putting in is being put to good use. I can see straight off the bat, okay, this is what's happening with my products, this is what I need to be focusing on, and this is what I need to do to stay compliant. It becomes a very quick and easy way to plan your activities, and this way you've got no surprises. And it's there to help keep your products on the market. Okay, so reminders and alerts, they're only so helpful. For them to work, someone has to act upon the task at hand. And it's ownership that leads to this action. And communicating this effectively can be its own challenge. Now, prospective clients, they come to us because they need a configurable way to ensure that all the regulatory processes for the medical devices could be completed. So to show you on the top left here, we've got a snapshot of the project management tool that's found in Xamarin RMS. So the tool lets you design your own company-specific goals and the actions that you need to undertake to get there. What's quite handy is you can even create your projects before the product data is even in the database. Now, Xamarin RMS is a solution that allows for global consistency and increases your speed to market. And we found that easier coordination between departments and the regulatory staff lead to a more successful regulatory device registration, which makes managing the complexity easier and ultimately improves the compliance of the devices. Now, lastly, on the bottom left is a snapshot of the Xamarin Electronic Document Management screen. Now, here at Instem, we recommend that you choose a solution that links your data and your regulatory documentation. I meant it before when I said to have one database for everything. You want to have the most up-to-date version and you want it to be accessed globally. Gearing up for a product submission, a renewal, and realising you've updated an old version of a document is a complete waste of time. It's a bit soul-destroying, and ultimately it could impact on you remaining compliant. Another way to ensure you stay compliant is to assess the impact of the new guideline. So when you manage your standards globally, preempting the impact can assist in a quicker and a more successful implementation. Okay, because if you can work out exactly where it's going to happen, it can lead to targeted changes which will overall save you time. Now, assessing the impact is usually done by extracting or re-entering data into Excel spreadsheets and turning the data into charts, and only then can you begin your analysis. Now, this is a potentially lengthy process, and from my own experience, I know one to be prone with errors. But if you had a tool like Xamarin DRMS, it's something that is completed instantly. The system takes all the data, it visualizes it in charts and figures, and then it updates it in real time. And this saves you time because you're not creating the charts yourself. Now, this image is taken from the medical device analytics pages of Xamarin DRMS, and it displays my chosen data in the graphs and the charts automatically. So, for example, which parts of the world do my products are covered? Okay, now I can see that here on the right-hand side in my world map, and where it's darkest is where I've got the most products, and when it becomes lighter, it becomes less or none at all. Okay, so this is my global distribution. How many devices have I got across the globe? Okay, I can see that I've got 65. Now, you will need multiple pages like this to display different elements of all of your information. And by this I mean pages dedicated to your registration activity, project management tasks, product overviews, and so on. So you can see a full overview of the impact. Now, you may wonder, why am I spending so much time pointing these things out to you? Well, to any one of these charts, you can apply a filter to the screen, and this will drill down into all of the charts displayed. Now, I'm making a hypothetical situation here. So as far as I'm aware, there aren't any changes currently happening to Brazil. But I'm going to suggest, in a hypothetical way, that there are regulatory changes happening in Brazil and that you have products there. Now, in order to assess the impact, which is where we started this, we want to find out the impact of what's going to happen if we have new regulatory changes in Brazil. I need to apply that as a filter. Now, if I do, this is what my screen would then look like. With a single click, I can apply the country Brazil as a filter, and then all of my visualizations will change to reflect that I've applied this filter. So please note on the top bar, we've got a list of the filters applied, and you can keep continuing to click through and add as many as you want until you've answered your original query. Now, to highlight some of the differences that have happened now I've applied this filter, I can show you, okay, so before we had 65 products, but in Brazil I've got 3. Note things like class and type, which are quite useful. If the new rules were applied were only specific to class 3s, I can add that to a filter and I can find out exactly which ones will be affected. And this is much easier and quicker than re-entering all of the data and making it into charts before you've even had a chance to analyse it. And what's more important is you can see the data from a global standpoint. And this is much better. It leads to better business decisions and gives you a fuller overview. You know that none of the data is missed because you spent so much time putting it into your database, and it pulls it all from there. My last point is one I very much want you to bear in mind when you consider how best to tackle this challenge. Whatever solution you choose to implement, ensure it caters for your medical device needs. Using a solution from something else or trying to make it fit your medical device problems will mean that you miss important specific functions. And this leads you to be more likely to make errors or to miss information. And the knock-on effect is you could miss key data, or it might even affect whether you're remaining compliant. Now, we get feedback from our industry contacts that say how frustrating it is when they use a tool that's not meant for medical devices. They end up spending more time doing workarounds just to try and make it fit, when actually it would just save a lot of time and problems if they had something that was medical device specific. We advise you to seek key functionality. We feel that you should be able to complete your facility registrations in the same place as your product registrations. We think you should be able to track your manufacturing sites. We think you should be able to complete your annual reports all from the same database. And this is why Salmon RMS has worked with top medical companies to ensure that the functionality covers all of the needs of the medical device registrations and your UDI submissions. Lastly, we are going to advise you that you should choose a long-term solution, which means choose one that's committed to remaining compliant and you can rely on them, that they're going to not only help you with your UDI issues, but all of the future challenges that you know you're going to face. You need a solution that is designed and prepared to evolve with the standard, something that doesn't need to be reconfigured with each release. And it's options like Salmon RMS which cater for your standards on a global scale, and they can evolve with this changing regulatory arena. All right, so let's have a quick recap on what we've covered today. Now, the FDA are enforcing the UDI compliance by the end of 2018, and as of some very recent changes, that's now been extended to 2020. The EU have also started to enforce UDI in the form of EU MDR. The challenges we face regarding these changing standards is ever present, and new legislations are always around the corner. And when you choose to tackle this, make your life easy. Maintain your data in one place, keep it up to date, and complete all of your regulatory tasks for the same solution. Be organised, ensure ownership of your tasks, and action your tasks in a timely manner. Last but not least, ensure your solution to this challenge contains medical device specific functions so you don't waste your time and you don't make mistakes. Okay, following this webcast, if you would like to request any literature or come and speak to one of our experts, please use our email address at the bottom, which is info@instem.com. I would really like to thank you for your attendance today, and I'm now going to hand back over to Joe, who's going to chair our Q&A session. But again, please can I remind you, if you've got any further questions or any queries beyond this Q&A session, please do reach out to us, again, using info@instem.com. Thank you very much, Joe. I think it's over back to you.
It is. Thank you, Ella and Dr. Mikhail. Just a few questions in the queue so far. If you have any, you're welcome to type them in now. Beth asks, will your product support both UDI requirements for the US and MDR requirements for Europe?
Oh, excellent question. Thank you, Joe and Beth. Yes, it absolutely will. It covers UDI submission for both US and the EU. It can support registrations for most regions. Yeah, and anything else that comes around the corner.
She adds, does it cover different risk classifications in each market?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All of the classifications for medical devices are covered, so that's completely across the board, US, Europe, Canada, so forth. The system's configurable, so although all of them will be in the list, we'll make sure that it only picks the ones that are specific to you and your products. But yeah, all of the risk classifications are there. Okay.
Next is from Jill. What if you don't have an IT infrastructure to support the solution?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is kind of touched upon with Dr. Mikhail as well. I know when you see like IT solutions and things like that, and if you're a small company, it can be a bit daunting, but so we're here at Instem, we're very consultative, and we work with our prospective clients, and when we go about kind of the implementation process, it's tailored to our particular client and stuff. So whether it's small or a large company, it'll work for both.
Question from John.
Okay.
Is your product on site or is it cloud-based? And what, if any, are any kind of cyber risks that we need to be concerned about?
It can be either. You can choose whether you want it on site, you can choose whether you want it cloud-based, and there's no cyber risks. We're very secure. As Dr. Mikhail said, it's all validated and everything like that, so no, there are no risks there at all. But you can choose to have it on site or cloud-based or both. It completely depends on what suits you the best.
And one last question. Bill asks, does your approach to UDI handle any type of medical device?
Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah, we, again, as Dr. Mikhail said, our system is for medical devices. You can also do it for your pharmaceutical products and stuff as well. But yeah, everything, all the different classes, your kits, all that kind of stuff, yeah, we cater for them all.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Ella, Dr. Mikhail, thank you very much. This was informative. And I have a couple comments here. Good job. Thank you. So an appreciative audience.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you very much.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. Very much appreciated. Thank you again to the audience for attending. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.